Hello everyone and welcome to All Things Watched. In this video we are going to talk about the brand new Apple Plus original series Monarch Legacy of Monsters. Now of course this series carries on the lore and sort of expands the monster universe, which is of course which does comprise of course of Godzilla and King Kong, but this is the American Hollywood version, and so let's be honest, this is not as good as the original Japanese. This American franchise is not as good as the Tahoe franchise, especially after seeing Godzilla minus one. None of the movies or series in the American version comes even close or even remotely close to me. But anyways, either way, we're not here to talk about Tahoe and Tahoe's movies. We're here to talk about Monarch. Legacy of Monsters. So this movie or series seems to take place right around the events of two movies, actually. The original Godzilla 2014, and then also the movie Kong Skull Island, because this series actually sort of tells the story of two different groups of characters, and the main characters that we see and that we follow in the present day, which takes place shortly after the events of the first Godzilla movie, which happens in San Francisco in 2014. Well, in modern day or present day, we follow Kate, a character known as Kate Randa, another character known as May, and another character known as Kentaro. And of course, they were portrayed by Anna Sawai, Kiersey Clemens, and Ren Watabe. And honestly, I thought their performances were done really well, and I thought the characters were kind of interesting, but probably not as interesting as I would have liked them, but they're still interesting enough, considering that we got to see the story from their perspective. Now, Kate was definitely the most compelling character, at least to me, with this modern group. Of course, with this modern group, we also have a character known as Lee Sha, who was portrayed by Kurt Russell. But his character also exists back in time as well, back in the flashback in the earlier time periods. And the same character, Lee Sha, was portrayed by Wyatt Russell. And I do think that he was probably a standout in this series, Wyatt Russell. He did an absolutely phenomenal job with his character, especially considering that he was portraying the younger version of Kurt Russell's character. And I thought that they both did a really good job at portraying the same character, and I thought that the way that the show was shot, they did a really good job at actually sort of making them similar. Because if I were to look at Wyatt Russell and Kurt Russell, in real life, I wouldn't think that they looked that much the same. But of course, once they're actually in the series, they do look very much, very much alike. And so I thought it was really cool that they, that they actually used the way that they transitioned, between the different time periods. I thought they did a really good job at making them, their performances were really good in terms of, portraying the same character. And so I really like that. Now, in terms of the story itself, it wasn't really anything special. Godzilla is in the series, but he's only in there, I think, for one episode or two episodes, I believe. Like, he sort of makes a cameo at the end of one episode. Then he's sort of like in the beginning of the next episode, but then he disappears until the finale, and then he basically reemerges in the finale. So it was really cool to see him come back. This is obviously why we watch these types of shows. We watch them to see the monsters, to see the titans, which is what they're referred to. But like I said, in terms of the story, really it wasn't anything that was mind-blowing. I actually like the flashback stuff a lot more than the modern day stuff. So when we were seeing the young version of Lee Sha, when we were seeing another character, Bill Randa, the young version of Bill, who was portrayed by Anders Holm, who also was a standout, I thought, in this series. When we seen the flashbacks, those were my favorite parts of the series overall. I loved going back. I loved that we got to see Skull Island from Kong, and Kong actually makes a very brief appearance in here as well, I think in the very first episode. So it was really cool to see his island and see him there. But like I said, it was so brief. If I had any complaint about this series, I think my biggest complaint would be the lack of monsters. The whole series is actually called Monarch Legacy of Monsters, and I feel like the monster side of it really let me down. Like, I was hoping there was going to be a lot more different monsters. I thought it was a really good opportunity to open up the world and introduce a bunch, a bunch of different monsters for future projects. But I just feel like they never really dive into it as much as I would have liked. Now, I can see some of the connections as to why they created this series, especially when you get towards the end of the series. The last few episodes, they start to dabble a little bit with time displacement, and which is one, if I was going to nitpick the series and sort of have a little bit of a critique towards it, it would definitely be, I found that the final few episodes was very, very predictable. So in this series, some of the characters ends up going into this different dimension or this different world, which normally would only be where the Titans are. Now, you do see that in the movies, especially Godzilla versus Kong. You do see that in that movie how they sort of bring Kong down into this sort of, I guess you would call it a hollow earth, or wherever this dimension is, or this different area that these Titans live. And they do explore that here in the series, but I thought they did a really poor job with it. I thought that they could have been a little bit more creative with it, but it was cool to see the time displacement, meaning that time works differently down there, and I think they explain it because it was like due to different gravitational pools and stuff like that. So I liked the idea of it, but I thought they could have done a little bit more with it, and it was very, very predictable because, right from the very get-go, pretty well from the first episode, this is a minor spoiler, so if you don't want to be fully ruined, then maybe click away, but this is a minor spoiler. Right from the very beginning of the series, you sort of learn that Kate's mother, ends up going missing at a very young age, or she ends up going missing, or wait, is it Kate or Kate's mother ends up going missing, and whatnot, and, I believe it was, or Kate's grandmother, actually, I think it was, one of Kate's relatives ends up going missing, and, nobody really knows what happened to her, which you also sort of explore and see in the flashback scenes as well with young Lee Shaw and young Bill Randa, and so you're sort of always wondering in the back of your mind, what happened to her. But given the fact that they kept focusing on her so much, I did believe, like right from the beginning of the series, I always thought in the back of my mind that she was going to return. And her name was Dr. Mira, I believe is how you pronounce her name, Kiko Mira, who was portrayed in real life by Mari Yamamoto. And she did a great job with that, by the way. Her performance was a standout as well, and definitely Kurt Russell's as well. So I just thought that it was really predictable when she came back, like too predictable. You could see that coming from like the first or second episode, especially when so much of Kate's story and Kentero's story revolves around them searching for family and trying to get answers, about stuff that happened in the past and how their families are linked to Monarch and whatnot. So I did find parts of the movie or parts of the series to be very predictable. But in terms of special effects, I thought it looked absolutely gorgeous. Apple is one of the richest companies, or if not the richest company in the world. It's probably one of the few companies that could actually afford to buy Disney, which could happen in the future maybe. So there's no reason for any Apple Plus series to not look really good. They got the money, they can afford the visuals, they can afford to hire, the good editors and good directors and all that stuff. And so in terms of visuals and how this series looked, I thought it looked really, really good. And in some cases, I thought maybe Godzilla even looked a little bit better than what he did in the actual movies. But either way, I really liked, I loved the visuals, and I thought some of the sites were done very well, especially with some of the panned out shots when you get really big sceneries. You get to see really big landscapes and whatnot. So some of that stuff was done really well, I thought. If I had to put a number on Monarch Legacy of Monsters, I think for me personally, all these things are subjective. Maybe you've seen it and absolutely loved it. Maybe you've seen it and absolutely hated it. But for me, I felt that this fell around a 60% for me, because I did thoroughly like it more than what I didn't, but it never really went as far as I would have hoped. And I feel like it was a missed opportunity, especially with this cast. They had a great cast, and I thought that they could have explored the characters a little bit better, and I do wish that we had more of the Titans. But with that being said, folks, that's my review of Monarch Legacy of Monsters. Let me know in the comment section below if you've seen it, and if you'd like to tell me why or why not. If you like this video, click that subscribe button, and until the next one, take care.